And this is Ken Kraetzer for CBSI Services, talking business. We're in New York City today, the Direct Marketing Club of New York, great event, talking about data analytics. And one of our speakers was David Allison, came in all the way from Vancouver. David talked a lot about new approaches to segmentation. David, tell us a little bit about the ways that you now recommend for segmentation.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here. New York's just an amazing city. I've had a great time and a really good breakfast. So we've spent the last 4 years now building this massive data set that helps us segment audiences based on what they care about. So demographics still have a place. We still need to understand just a description of who it is we're trying to talk to, and we're building a segment, a persona, an audience profile, whatever it is you want to use to call them. Psychographics help us understand how somebody has behaved, how that audience has behaved around a particular product or category in the past. So up until this moment in time, an audience has done X or has bought X, Y number of things or whatever. What we've been missing is a way to predict what we can get them to do next. And that's what ValueGraphics is all about. And it's based on the basic social premise that what we value determines what we do. So if we can understand the values for an entire target audience of people, we're going to be able to tell you what their behavior will be if given stimulus A or stimulus B. Now we have the ability to influence that audience like we've never been able to before.
Very good. We talked a little bit about how unpredictable baby boomers are, millennials, in their values, and also in what their purchasing behavior might be, and what they agree on and don't agree on. How do you apply your concept you talked about in the database that you've created?
So for any, it's a great question. For any product or service or brand or idea or, I don't know, advocacy group trying to get people to change their minds about something, what we do is we find a small sample, a representative sample of the population that you're trying to influence. We ask them a few questions, and then we use that as a way to unlock our benchmark study of now close to 400,000 surveys from around the world that's constructed in what any statistician who's listening to this will be excited to hear as a random, stratified, statistically representative sample of the population. So basically just means it's bulletproof the way this data has been put together. 400,000 surveys, 380 metrics we've measured. We can go in there with these few sample questions that we've asked of a population around a particular idea and figure out where the signals are in the noise, and then pull out, extrapolate profiles that match up.
Very good. It sounds so much like when we were working with, we only had demographic information to apply to large credit card customer base years ago, and trying to identify opportunities for financial service marketing. That's our big focus at CBSI is the credit card industry and financial services. What are some of the ways that your project, your capability could help us in the banking business?
We've actually done a whole lot of looking into the banking world in terms of people who prefer to online bank versus people who prefer to go to a bank branch. You know, one of the big conversations going on in boardrooms at major banks and credit unions around the world right now is, what do we do with all this property we have? We have these bank branches in some pretty high cost locations. Should we sell these assets, or should we, it's funny how I kind of feel sorry for the banking industry in one respect. All these little bells and whistles that were supposed to just be little online add-ons to the banking experience have gone on and become the major competitor for most of them. So we've done a bunch of profiling around who wants to go to banks, who wants to be online, what the differences are, what are the values we need to trigger in order to get people to go to banks on a more regular basis. We've looked at different attributes around location. We've looked at different attributes around products and around services. One of the most fascinating things, I think, was the difference between credit union customers and bank customers. So we found out what the value sets are for both sides of that equation, and we were able to, if you're a credit union, I can tell you how to grab some bank customers. You're a bank, I can tell you how to grab some credit union customers, all based on their values.
Well, I'm going to add a question to this because it just came up at a big conference we were at in May, is how fintech organizations now are taking receivables from big banks, and banks are sometimes trying to learn whether to live with them or how to compete. Any impact you've seen on the fintech industry compared with what you just described, credit unions and banks?
You know, I don't know a lot about the fintech industry, but I can tell you that there isn't a single industry that shouldn't be paying attention to this base level understanding, this base level data set that we've built. demographics, if you're thinking about a customer group, whether it's B2B or B2C, you're thinking about a customer group based on how old they are, what their gender is, what their rank is, how much education they have, what their title is at the office. None of those things help you understand who these people are as human beings and how they're going to behave. For example, we've done a lot of work on Wall Street. We work with hedge funds. We help hedge funds understand how to talk to institutional investors. You'd think that that would be a fairly proscribed series of steps that you would go through to get an institutional investor to put money into one hedge fund versus another. But if you understand the values of those institutional investors, they're human values as human beings, not as job titles, and you talk to them about what your hedge fund has to offer that the other guys don't, you end up with an amazingly engaged group of people who are very anxious to talk to you about your particular hedge fund. So this stuff works in every single situation, fintech included.
Thank you very much, David. Tell us about the book that you provided to all the guests at the meeting this morning, the Direct Marketing Club of New York. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, I wrote this book. We are all the same age now. It's about ValueGraphics and the End of Demographic Stereotypes. We called it We Are All the Same Age Now because age seems to be the one demographic category that we begin every conversation about everything with in every boardroom everywhere in the world. So the first thing we do when we sit down and decide it's time to start a new campaign, build a new product, spend some new money on a new R&D project, is we try and figure out if we're talking to 18 to 24-year-olds or 25 to 36-year-olds or 37 to 45-year-olds. And then from there, we start layering on other bits of demographic information. What our database has found out for us, however, is that those categories mean nothing. They're meaningless today. And instead, we need to be using values as a way to understand how to influence and motivate the behavior of the audiences that we're trying to reach.
David, final question is tell us a little bit about your company and some of the steps along your career path. You've done a lot.
I spent a long time working in ad agencies, and then I went and started one of my own. I had always written books and gotten on stage as a way to attract new business for the agency I worked for, and then the agency that I owned. When I sold my agency about 3.5 years ago, I decided it was time to write another book, and I thought it was going to be about the niche little industry that I'd always worked in, which was high-end real estate development, big condo towers and resorts and those sorts of things. And as the data started coming in and showing us that age did not matter, demographics did not matter around people, how they chose a home, the light bulb went on and said, why would this just be about homes? Why wouldn't this be about everything? So we just increased the data that we collected, and we were able to prove that age and gender and income and marital status, number of kids, education, none of that stuff is a reliable indicator of how anybody is going to behave around any product or service or category anymore. I guess my marketing background set me up to help tell these kinds of stories to folks like you and to people like you. But it's about facts. It's not about guesswork.
Very good. David Allison, thank you for joining us here at the Direct Marketing Club of New York. Great to hear your insight. Great to have you visit here in New York.
Thanks very much. It's been great.
Our pleasure. This is Ken Kraetzer for CBSI Services Talking Business at the Direct Marketing Club of New York.